Welcome everyone to yet another new Draft League season on my channel. The Coquitlam Red Gyarados are back to compete in what will most likely be their final Draft League season before the release of Sword and Shield this winter. This is going to be the draft analysis for Season 6 of the IBL, otherwise known as the International Battling League, commissioned by Eric aka Neon Zero, founded by Brendan aka Dark Devil 26. Earlier this year we competed in the IBL D-League, and since then we have been promoted to the main league of the IBL, and we will be competing amongst 11 other coaches, so 12 coaches total in the league, comprised of some other returning coaches from the D-League, some returning coaches from the main league in IBL Season 5, and some completely new coaches as well. We will play each coach once in the regular season for a total of 11 games, and then hopefully we will make playoffs on top of that. Top 6 out of 12 coaches will make the playoffs. Top 2 will get buys to the semifinals. Of course, we will set the modest goal of coming top 6 and just making playoffs for us. But I do think that finishing in the top 2 and getting one of the buys to the semifinals is very attainable. But I don't want to set the bar too high because, you know, it is still baseball season. I am still very busy with coaching and stuff like that, so I don't want to be dedicating too much time to these games, but I still am happy to be here and looking forward to having some fun this season. Now, I must apologize for this upload being late. I know that it was supposed to go up on Monday 2 days ago, but I just haven't had the time to make this video as best as it can be. I love putting 100% into these draft analysis videos, and it just, yeah, I want to make the best content possible, and if that means it has to be 2 days late, then that's the way it's gonna have to be, unfortunately. But we will definitely be back on time for Monday uploads, regular Monday uploads, starting with our week 1 battle next week, so not to worry. This was a very standard tiered 11-mon draft. You get your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3s, tier 4, tier 5, get your mega, and then you have 400 free points for your remaining 4 picks that you can spend however you like. There's no S tiers allowed, like there's no Tapu Leles or Magirnas or Naganadels floating around, just your standard run-of-the-mill draft pool. No gimmicks like the fire sales from PCL, just a very standard draft that everybody should be familiar with at this point. With that said, I had the number 2 overall pick in this draft. So I thought that this was a great opportunity to grab a highly touted mon that I have never used before. Now, first pick in the draft belonged to Mid Pokemaster, and he took Tapu Koko, which I was completely fine with because I already have Tapu Koko in the PCL D-League, so I am content letting somebody else use it for this season. Instead, with the number 2 pick, I am going to grab Celesteela. As mentioned, Celesteela is a mon that I have never used before, but there's one steel flying kind of rival that it has that I do have a lot of experience using, and I'd like to compare Celesteela to that Pokemon at times, and that is Skarmory. Skarmory is a mon that I actually drafted on my IBL D-League team. So when I compare the two, Skarmory is a steel type that gets Stealth Rocks, and Stealth Rocks are very valuable to have on the team. It also gets spikes on top of that, so it's a great hazard setter, and it has great defensive typing, and it has reliable recovery and roost. Celesteela, on the other hand, is a steel type that doesn't have access to any entry hazards. So that's one of the reasons why in the past I've kind of not really thought too highly of Celesteela. You know, steel type is generally one of the typings that you want to have access to Stealth Rocks on your team, so the fact that if you're drafting a steel type without access to Stealth Rocks, then you really have to work hard to patch that up with the rest of your team, which you may not necessarily want to do. However, Celesteela still can do a bunch of other different things to support the team that Skarmory just can't. It has a much higher base HP and special defense stat than Skarmory, so it's able to take hits on both the physically defensive and specially defensive side. It has great physical and special attacking stats. Its stat distribution is actually comparable to a mythical Pokemon like Mew or Manaphy, in that it's near base 100s across the board in everything except for speed, but it can make up for that because it has access to Autotomize, which gives it +2 in speed. It's very good at chipping down your opponent's team by using Leech Seed to just get some chip damage on the opposing team, and then you can switch Celesteela out into your teammates and heal your teammates up a little bit. And it's just great for forcing switches because there really aren't very many mons out there that can do significant damage to Celesteela. It has a pretty strong attacking move pool as well. You got your steel and flying type stabs on both sides. Flash Cannon, Heavy Slam hits extremely hard on the physically attacking side. Celesteela, I believe, is the heaviest Pokemon, listed at exactly 999.9 kilograms, according to Cerebi. So it is hitting pretty much everything in the Pokedex for a very powerful 120 base power Heavy Slam. However, when using Heavy Slam in conjunction with Autotomize, you do have to be careful that you are not weakening the power of Heavy Slam by going for Autotomize, because Autotomize has a secondary effect of cutting Celesteela's weight in half. So that could, depending on the weight of the Pokemon that you are going up against, you might be cutting the power of Heavy Slam. Like it might change from 120 to 100 or 100 to 80 or something like that. Then it gets physical coverage like Superpower, Earthquake, Stone Edge, as well as special coverage such as Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Giga Drain. Celesteela can help the team in so many different ways, whether it be from a defensive or an offensive standpoint, and that's why it is so revered in draft leagues and such a valuable member of the team. So I opted to not make Celesteela one of my Z captains, but I may decide at some point down the road to change that. I decided to make my second pick a Z captain instead of Celesteela, and my second pick is a tier 2 mon, so it's going to give me more Z points to work with later on in the draft with some of my lower tier picks. So my second pick of the draft, if I'm drafting around Celesteela, it has two clear weaknesses in fire and electric, and then one other type that it really doesn't like going up against is water types. Bulky waters can often just sit in front of it and click Scald, and Celesteela doesn't enjoy being burned because it doesn't want to be taking that residual damage. It wants to be constantly recovering HP from stuff like Leech Seed and leftovers. So the best thing to take on all three of those types would be a very reliable dragon. So we're going to grab Hydreigon to complement Celesteela. Hydreigon is a mon that I have quite a bit of experience using. I used it in a league called the GPL Grand Pokemon League, which was not really a draft league, but it was similar to like a counter teaming format like this one. I've used it on an OU team before. I brought it to a VGC regional in 2018 that I went to for fun. It was honestly probably the least valuable member of the team, but I did bring it as a Z user. I actually had Black Hole Eclipse on that Hydreigon, and I know I clicked it at least once in that tournament. But I bring that up because Hydreigon, of course, is going to be one of our 3 Z users on this team, to start at least. Now, I find Hydreigon to be very different from most other dragons in the drafting pool, such as Salamence, Haxorus or Mega Charizard X, and that all three of those mons that I just mentioned are have incredible sweeping potential with Dragon Dance, and if they manage to get a Dragon Dance up, they hit super hard. If you don't have anything to take hits from them or outspeed them, then you kind of just lose. But Hydreigon is not like that. Hydreigon is not necessarily a setup sweeper, but it is a decent wall breaker thanks to its great coverage that it has. Its typing is phenomenal. It has so many key resistances that are going to help this team out so much. Of course, I already mentioned it covers Fire, Water, and Electric for the Celesteela. It also has key resistances to Ghost and Dark that hit Celesteela neutrally. And it is also immune to Psychic and Ground thanks to its Levitate ability. Hydreigon's natural bulk is very solid. Its HP defense, special defense stats are very respectable, not quite on the level of Celesteela, but it does kind of make up for that in the fact that Hydreigon has access to reliable recovery in Roost, whereas Celesteela's only recovery, it relies on Leech Seed, and if you want to run Rest on Celesteela, that probably wouldn't be the worst set ever, but Leech Seed is far more common for sure. So you can use Hydreigon defensively, and of course you can use it offensively, especially since it has access to Z moves on this team. It has a lot of coverage options that it can boost, like it has Earth Power, you can fire off some Tectonic Rages, Flamethrower, some Inferno Overdrives, and the number one type that checks Hydreigon is Fairy type, since it's immune to Dragon type and resists Dark type, so it takes on both of its stabs very well. And of course it's 4 times weak to Fairy type attacks, but if you really need it, you can blow through those Fairy types that would otherwise check you by firing off a Z Belch. It's a great user of the Choice Scarf item, especially since it has access to U-turn. It can force some things out and pivot out into a more favorable matchup. And it can also boost its speed with something like a Z Sunny Day, and that speed boost will allow it to use its other coverage moves to clean up a game, perhaps. On paper, Hydreigon is perhaps not the most threatening dragon of them all, but I would argue that it has to be one of the most versatile, and it's definitely the best fit for this team. Very good value at tier 2, and I was pretty ecstatic to see it still on the board when the draft came back around to my turn. So first 2 picks, Celesteela, Hydreigon, were off to a very good start. Mid Pokemaster now takes his second and third picks, and then it's my turn again. So I have a pseudo wheel pick. In building around Celesteela and really wanting to make sure that Celesteela shines on this team, my goal is to not have it shoehorned into being the key resistance to any one type. Of course, valuable resistances that steel types have are 2 things like Psychic and Flying and Fairy. So I want to make sure that I cover... I have multiple resistances to those types so that I can use Celesteela in any way that I want. That I'm not forced to bring it as a defensive response to all of those types, you know? So getting Hydreigon right away was really helpful because immediately I have a Dark type that I can also use as a switch into Psychic types. And my next pick is going to be an Electric type that I can also use as a switch into Flying types, and as well as Steel types, other types that Celesteela resists, yes, but like I said, don't necessarily want to be using Celesteela as a catch-all switch-in. It can also deal with Water types to an extent, you know, being an Electric type, it hits Water types super effectively. It may not necessarily want to switch in on them, but it can threaten them out offensively afterwards. So my third pick of the draft is going to be Zeraora. Now Zeraora's blistering 143 base speed stat is what makes this mon super special. Such an elite speed stat is always very valuable to have on a draft league team, and the fact that its speed is so high, it doesn't always need to run a ton of speed investment every week to outspeed the mons that it needs to, so that leaves more room to invest in bulk or more room to invest in attack. Like you might be able to run an adamant or a modest nature rather than a jolly or a timid nature and hit even harder. Its move pool is primarily on the physical side, and its physical attack is 10 base points stronger than its special attack. Physical move pool includes like knockoff, fire punch, close combat, as well as its signature move, Plasma Fists. Plasma Fists is a very, very awesome move. It is a 100 base power physical electric type attack. Probably the only other electric attack on the physical side that is better than Plasma Fists would be Bolt Strike, which pretty much only Victini can use. And what Plasma Fist does is on the turn that you use it, every normal type attack that may be directed towards you on that turn actually turns into an electric type attack, which will trigger Zeraora's Volt Absorb and actually heal it for 25% rather than do any damage to it. Of course, Zeraora being an electric immunity is another way that it further complements Celesteela, in that Celesteela is very vulnerable to Volt Switch, and Zeraora can come in on Volt Switch very easily and kill the opponent's momentum just like that. Zeraora has a variety of setup options as well. It can use Work Up to boost both of its attacking stats. It can use Bulk Up to boost its physical attack and defense. And it can also use Calm Mind to boost its special attack and special defense. It gets a couple of cool utility options as well. It's a fast taunt user. So right off the bat, 2 of my first 3 picks have access to taunt. It has access to Snarl, which can is another way of preventing setup on the opposing side. So like that can stop some Calm Mind users like Reuniclus or whatever. And it's also a decent user of Endeavor. Once it can use Endeavor to break through a Pokemon that might be causing the team problems. Make sure that you can weaken that thing for something else on your team to pick it off and get rid of it. Zeraora is another tier 2 mon costing 120 of my free points, and that is the perfect value for this mon. I am very, very happy with the first 3 picks of my draft, and now I have to wait a little while to make the next 2 picks. So at this stage, I really don't know what Mega I want for this team. Of course, I am required to draft a Mega, so I need to be thinking about which one might fit the team the best. I was looking at a number of options, but the one that I was probably considering the most at first was Mega Ampharos. I thought Mega Ampharos would be a really, really fun pick to pair with Celesteela, but for rounds 2 and 3, when Hydreigon and Zeraora were still on the board and available for me to take, I really couldn't pass up either one of those, so that kind of ruined the plan of adding Mega Ampharos to my team. So now, in terms of the Mega slot, I'm kind of back to the drawing board. But before I decide to take my Mega, I am going to take one of my absolute favorite mons to use in competitive Pokemon. Empoleon's out there with the best defogger meme, and you know what? I'm gonna start the best Rapid Spinner meme right here. I always like having a good Rapid Spinner on my team. That's something that I highly value, and I'm gonna go ahead and take the best Rapid Spinner, because why not? It's still there, and that's Tentacruel. I probably sound like I'm talking nonsense to you right now. Why would Tentacruel, of all things, be the best spinner in all of Pokemon? But I just love this thing. I just love this thing so much. It helps the team in so many different ways. You could call Celesteela a Gloomon. I would absolutely call Tentacruel a Gloomon. It has 8 total resistances. The key resistances here would be Fire to support the Celesteela, and it also has key resistances to Bug and Fairy. So I pick up another Fairy resistance, so Celesteela isn't relying on checking those all the time. So the reason why I think that Tentacruel is the best Rapid Spinner in the game is Rapid Spinners don't like going up against Ghost types for the most part, because Ghost types can block Rapid Spin, and the whole point of using Spin is to get hazards off your side of the field. But if a Ghost type comes in, then Rapid Spin fails and the hazards stay on your side of the field. But a lot of Rapid Spinners don't like taking on Ghost types in general. Like if you use Excadrill as an example, and say something like Cofagrigus switches in to be immune to a Rapid Spin, now you have to fear getting burned from that Ghost type using Will-O-Wisp. Tentacruel does not give a crap about getting burned. It is a special attacker that does not take super effective damage from Ghost type attacks, as opposed to Starmie, another Rapid Spinner that is weak to Ghost moves. Tentacruel can often 1v1 those Ghost types that would otherwise block it from Rapid Spinning, so I would say that that is a good exchange. Tentacruel also has access to Toxic Spikes. Anybody who knows me and who's played against me knows how much I love to use Toxic Spikes, especially in draft format. Poison being my favorite typing, I am very excited to pick up a good Toxic Spikes user very early in the draft. Tentacruel has an underrated base 100 speed stat, so it's actually naturally faster than things like Hydreigon, like I have on my own team. So being able to run max HP and max speed stats, that kind of spread is so great because it's still bulky enough to take hits from the mons that it needs to, and it can outspeed them and do some extra damage to them, thanks to, you know, being able to get 2 attacks off against it instead of 1, for example. Its offensive stats are a little bit lacking, but it will never be setup fodder if it doesn't want to be, because it has access to Haze. It can force switches with Acid Spray, very cool move that can really cripple walls and you know, force them out, because it is reducing their special defense by 2 stages. So that is, the walls can't stay in forever against that. They're going to be taking huge chunks of damage after a while. You can use it as a breaker with Swords Dance. I have actually picked up a 4-mon sweep with a Swords Dance Tentacruel before. Mind you, that was in a tier 3 and below tournament, so this format is a little bit different and probably a little harder to make Swords Dance Tentacruel work, but it is still very possible. It can trap mons on the opposing team with Infestation, wear them down with toxic damage and stuff. And also there's mind games that play with Mirror Coat. It's very specially defensive, so it can stay in on electro types and click Mirror Coat against them and do a ton of damage. It's actually a decent, if it's not carrying something like Toxic Spikes, it's actually a decent Assault Vest user. So with the Assault Vest item, it can have like dual stab with Scald and Sludge Bomb, and then it can still use Rapid Spin, and it can also use Mirror Coat. And with that extra boost in special defense, it won't be taking too much damage from special hits, so it can tank those easier and then fire off devastating Mirror Coats in return. Has 3 great abilities. Clear Body, underrated ability. If it's trying to spin away sticky webs and the Tentacruel has Clear Body, its speed will not be dropped, so it will still outspeed certain things and be able to get rid of the sticky webs to support the rest of the team. I kind of wish that Clear Body worked in this so that it could completely block Defog, because of course Tentacruel would not have its evasiveness lowered by the Defog, but unfortunately Defog still works in the way that it can get rid of hazards on both sides of the field, even though it has no effect on the Pokemon itself. Liquid Ooze is a very good ability as well. It prevents Pokemon that would be gaining HP recovery back from moves like Giga Drain, Drain Punch, and Leech Seed from actually regaining health. It actually has the opposite effect. They lose 1/8 of their health by hitting Tentacruel with such a move. In fact, that's why I personally think Tentacruel is one of the best defensive responses to Celesteela, because it can come in and resist Celesteela's Steel-type stab, and if Celesteela wants to Leech Seed it, it's actually going to be wearing itself down as well as wearing Tentacruel down, because Tentacruel still loses HP to the Leech Seed, but at least Celesteela is not regaining HP at the same time. And then Rain Dish is also a decent ability if you want to set up Rain Dance to boost the power of Tentacruel's water type moves, as well as give it a little bit of extra recovery, then that is very useful as well. I could go on and on and on about Tentacruel. I can't say enough good things about it. I am very, very happy to have it on this team. Some would say that going for it in round 4 is a bit of a stretch, but I don't care. That is how much I value having this mon. Now we're at round 5, and this is when I'm going to end up taking my Mega Pokemon. And this wasn't really one of the Megas that was on my radar from the start, but I saw it still available, and I thought that it would fit the team pretty well, and it's one that I have not really used much in the past, and I'm very much looking forward to using this season, and that's going to be Mega Gallade. Now, Gallade is a nostalgic favorite of mine. I remember it being one of the first mons that I leveled up to level 100 in Pokemon Platinum, almost like 9 or 10 years ago. Way before I had any concept of competitive Pokemon, that's for sure. And Mega Gallade always seems to put in work against me. I think that I've faced it 3 times in YouTube matches so far, and I believe it's gone 5-1 against me, so I don't have a very good record against it. I did beat it once in the LET, which is a Wi-Fi league that I don't upload. The videos are on YouTube, and I retweet them constantly. So I did decently in that game against Mega Gallade, but in the matches that I've uploaded to YouTube, it's been a bit of a different story. So I'm glad that it's on my team this time, and it is not on somebody else's team to get 2 or 3 kills against me. I feel like Mega Gallade's reputation has grown a lot over time. I feel like when it was first released, people didn't really care that much for it. The Mega Medicham was already a thing, so Mega Gallade rivaling Medicham, people were kind of like, I don't know, why would I use this over Mega Medicham? It hits way, way, way harder with pure power, and has better forms of priority too, with Fake Out and Bullet Punch. While they are similar in some respects, there are a number of things that Mega Gallade does much better than Mega Medicham. One thing that Mega Gallade can do that Medicham cannot do is set up a Swords Dance. Swords Dance, so a +2 close combat from base 165 attack that Mega Gallade has is gonna hurt quite a bit. There are pretty much nothing can take a hit from that. Of course, you have your ghost types that are immune to fighting type moves, but we have decent answers for ghost types so far, and there will be more to come as well. If you don't have good fighting switch-ins, close combat from Mega Gallade is pretty much going to be 2-hit KOing everything on your team. Now, you can boost its attack as well as its defense with Bulk Up if you wanted to, and that gives more usefulness to a Drain Punch set over a close combat set, so that you may want to keep your defensive stats as high as possible to take hits from possible faster mons that might want to come in and revenge kill Gallade, take advantage of it being at -1 defense and special defense from clicking close combat, but instead maybe you can go for a bulk up set with Drain Punch to recover your health and keep your defenses high. Mega Gallade only has 3 weaknesses that are well covered by the 4 other mons on my team so far. It's weak to flying, which is resisted by both Zeraora and Celesteela. It's weak to Fairy, which is resisted by both Tentacruel and Celesteela. And it's weak to Ghost, which Hydreigon can come in on most ghosts very easily and threaten them with some big damage. This is the first decent priority option that we have as well in Shadow Sneak. Now, Shadow Sneak's not going to be hitting too hard because it is not stab, of course. And another priority option that we have on the team is Fake Out Zeraora, but I don't think that Zeraora is going to be packing Fake Out very often. It could help in certain situations, but I don't know if it's going to be in a common move to pack on Zeraora this season. Yes, Gallade can hit extremely hard, but its utility move pool is also insane. It has access to Encore, Disable, Taunt, Destiny Bond, Memento, Trick Room Memento shenanigans to set up for some slower mons could always be helpful. It can also Thunderwave, Will-O-Wisp. So since it has Thunderwave and Will-O-Wisp, of course it has Toxic. Everything has Toxic. It has all 3 forms of status, and it can Pain Split as well to keep walls at low HP and recover its own HP in the process. If you can afford to invest in Gallade's HP, its defense and special defense stats are quite good. So with some HP investment, Mega Gallade can be very bulky and take a lot of hits and dish out a lot of damage in return and support the team in several different ways with its insane utility move pool. So this is a great mega pick for this team. I'm very happy to have Mega Gallade. So now I had to wait a little bit for it to come back around to my turn, and my goal with my next 2 picks was to make sure that I grabbed some hazard setters, because so far with my first 5 picks, I have 0 hazard setters. So I want to make sure that I can pick up some good stealth rockers for my team. I also don't have a ground type, so I was thinking that I could just grab Hippowdon with my next pick, which is a very solid ground type, another tier 2. So it's going to be the 3rd tier 2 on my team, which is unusual for me to be drafting so many tier 2s. Usually I have only drafted 1, and then I've gone after a lot of tier 3s and tier 4s. I have used Hippowdon a little bit before. I used it in a tournament in the Mount Silver League server. That was a almost any ability tournament. I have uploaded my games for that on my channel in the past. So I used I used it for Sandstream, and it also had Poison Heal as an option to run on it, so that you couldn't toxic stall it down. But of course, we don't have Poison Heal on this Hippowdon, because this is not some sort of screwy meta or anything. I want to make it clear that I am not drafting Hippowdon to be a sand setter for the team. I'm not trying to draft a sand team here. 9 times out of 10, I am definitely going to be using Sand Force on this Hippowdon. Not that that's going to be any more helpful to Hippowdon itself than Sandstream would be. But I don't necessarily want the rest of my team to be chipped down by the Sandstorm. I don't know, I might use Sandstream to maybe reset opponents' weather if I am going up against other weather teams in the league, who knows. I'm drafting Hippowdon because it sets Stealth Rocks, it's a very bulky ground type, extremely good physical wall, its physically defensive stats are ridiculous, and it has reliable recovery in Slack Off, so it can just switch in and take a lot of hits from a lot of different things and be a good bulky wall for the team. Even base 72 special defense is not bad. Its physical defense is so good that it doesn't even always need to run max bulk and physical defense. It can run a lot of mixed bulk sets to take hits from certain other mons, depending on what the matchup may be. Its move pool is not really that deep, but that's okay. It's going to be so it's pretty predictable for the most part. It's just going to be something that takes hits, recovers off damage, maybe try to spread toxics around, get stealth rocks up. It can whirlwind out things, that may try to set up on the Hippowdon. Some cool options that it does get, it does have Yawn, so it can use Yawn to try and put one of the opposing Pokemon to sleep, force some switches on their side, and it can also boost its stats with Stockpile and Curse. But of course, those both of those sets are very vulnerable to being worn down by Toxic, so we'll have to be careful of that. Not much else to say about Hippowdon. You know, it sets rocks, takes some hits. That's great for the team at this point. So next we are going to grab another Stealth Rocker, and this is going to be another Steel type as well. So I am going to get a second Steel type to complement Celesteela, and this is a Steel type that does have access to Stealth Rocks, which I appreciate, and that's going to be Bronzong. Bronzong, I do have a little bit of experience using. I used it on a couple of really niche teams, like niche format teams. I actually built a Sky Battle team in Generation 6 where all of my Pokemon were like flying types or levitating mons. And I also used Bronzong on a Stab Mons team for a fun tournament that we held in the Ion server. In that tournament, Mons could only use moves that were of the same type as the Pokemon. So Bronzong could only use Steel type and Psychic type moves. So my set for that was Gyro Balls and Headbutt, Rest with Chesto Berry. That's probably one of Bronzong's best forms of recovery, is Resto Chesto. And then I also had Trick Room on that set. And some other Mons on the team that could take decent advantage of Trick Room. But of course, on this team, we are not so limited in its moveset options. As a secondary Steel type to Celesteela, it only shares one weakness with it, that being the Fire weakness. And I do have the ability to run Heat Proof on Bronzong, which can negate that Fire weakness if I need to. Another cool thing that I learned about the Heatproof ability recently is that it actually cuts damage that you take from burn in half. So rather than take 1/16 health away every turn from burn, if you have Heatproof and you're burned, you actually only lose 1/32 of your HP, which is about 3%. So if you have leftovers on a Heatproof set and you're burned, you're actually still gaining HP every turn. You'd be gaining about 3% HP every turn. It's also a second Psychic type on the team. The first Psychic type being Mega Gallade, but it only shares one weakness with Mega Gallade, that being Ghost. And as I've mentioned, we have a lot of other Mons on the team to take on Ghost types, and we will get to those. And it actually resists Mega Gallade's two other weaknesses, being Flying and Fairy. Bronzong is a very reliable defensive Steel type. It's going to take the hits that you need it to, similar to Hippowdon, although of course Bronzong has quite a bit less longevity since it doesn't have access to reliable recovery. And this really frees up Celesteela to fill any role that it wants. It really opens the door for Celesteela to run more offensive sets rather than defensive. Now, I mentioned Bronzong doesn't have much in the way of recovery, but it does, thanks to the new move tutors in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, have access to Recycle. And you see a lot of Mons with Gluttony run Recycle and 50% Berry, and they are able to recover their health fairly easily that way. Now, Bronzong doesn't have access to Gluttony, but it can try to, if it falls below 25% multiple times and recycles the berry, then it can try to keep itself at a reasonable amount of health if you need it to have as much longevity as you possibly can. And you can also recycle other items besides 50% berries, so I may have a one or two gimmicks in mind to use with Recycle Bronzong. It's also a good Trick Room user. I really like the Trick Room plus Explosion combination so that you can get another Mon in on your team very easily. that is more offensive and can take just as good advantage of the Trick Room. So we actually have 2 Trick Room users on the team now, being Bronzong and Mega Gallade. Even though Mega Gallade is base 110 speed, if you really want to take advantage of a fast team, then you can run it with a lot of bulk and minimum speed. Go for Trick Room and then be able to hit a lot of the offensive mons for a lot of damage and stuff. So yeah, I think Bronzong is definitely not a redundant pick here. I think it's definitely going to help the team. These 2 picks I picked up 2 very good, reliable rockers. And with Bronzong, I'm filling my tier 4 requirement here. So I think I did well with my 2 picks here. Now, my next priority was to fill the speed gap on my team between Mega Gallade at base 110 and Zeraora at base 143. And there was one Mon in tier 3 that fit that speed tier very well, and I was really hoping that it would go all of that time without getting picked and it would make it back to me, and thankfully it did, and that is going to be Swellow. So similar to Gallade, Swellow is another nostalgia Mon for me. One of my favorite Mons to use in the Gen 3 games. I really liked how easy it was to level up. I think that's the main thing I remember about using it, and it looks really cool. It looked cooler back then. I think its Generation 7 sprite doesn't make it look as cool, but that's me being nitpicky, I guess. So of course, Swellow, very fast. Its offensive base stats don't blow you away, but it packs a punch because it has a number of very powerful attacks that it can use on both the physical and special attacking side. The 2 most common sets you will see from Swellow are a Guts Facade set. So Guts Flame Orb, you can get basically a choice band boost in your attack, and then fire off 140 powered facades, and then you can also hit things with Brave Bird, although you will be taking quite a lot of recoil from doing that because Swellow's base HP is not so great. In fact, Swellow is easily the frailest Mon on this team and one of the frailest Mons in the draft pool in general. But another set that it can run is Specs Boomburst with the Scrappy ability. And this is what I mean about having things to take on ghost types, because it being partially normal type, it is immune to ghost type moves, and it also has the Scrappy ability, so it can hit those ghost types with its very powerful normal type stab. Boomburst is base 140 power move on the normal side, and Swellow actually has a decent special attack stat to work with now. Previously, in Generation 6, its special attack stat was a pathetic base 50, but since then, it's actually received a massive buff, and it's now all the way up to base 75 special attack, which isn't really that great, but it's still usable when you have moves as powerful as Boomburst to exploit. You're likely going to see one or the other when it comes to Swellow sets, either the Flame Orb Guts Facade or the Choice Specs with Boomburst. But there are some other things you can do with Swellow, like if you want to still be a physical attacker and be able to hit ghost types, then you can just run a Scrappy set. You could still run Facade Flame Orb, and that would still do a lot of damage. It would be able to hit ghost types, however, it would not get the added boost from Guts, and all of your other attacks on Swellow would, their power would be cut in half from the burn, unless you chose to Toxic Poison yourself with the Toxic Orb instead of the Flame Orb. Swellow provides another form of priority for the team, not an extremely powerful form of priority, but it does get quick attack to pick off weakened Mons if we really need it. Has U-turn for initiative, and of course the one thing that really stops Swellow in its tracks for the most part is like bulky steals that resist both of its stabs, normal and flying. But it does have one fighting move that it can surprise them with, and that is Reversal. Reversal only really does a lot of damage if Swellow's HP is down really, really low. Usually you'd like to get it down to about 1 HP, so that Reversal, I believe at 1 HP is 200 base power. So if you can, I think you can run some sort of Endure Reversal set if you really wanted to. It also gets, Swellow also gets Endeavor, so you can have like Endure, Reversal, and Endeavor, and then Quick Attack or something to really mess with your opponent. But yeah, like I said, you're pretty much always going to see one of two sets on Swellow, taking advantage of its one of its two useful abilities. For my next pick, I'm going to grab my 4th tier 2 on this team. So basically what I was thinking is that I have 2 free slots to fill still. I have 160 points to work with. So I could either pick up 2 tier 4 mons or another tier 2 mon and a second tier 5. And honestly, I'm okay with taking 2 tier 5s on this team. I think taking another tier 2 mon that will help that is very strong will work out better for the team, and I think I can still get some decent utility out of my tier 5 picks. So I'm gonna end up taking Crawdaunt from tier 2. Now I'm once again doubling up on a couple of types here. This is going to be my second water type alongside Tentacruel, and I've actually used Crawdaunt before, and the one team that I had it on, Tentacruel was also on that team. That was the tier 3 and below tournament that I was in. I had both Crawdaunt and Tentacruel on that team, and they worked decently well together. They only share one weakness, being electric, and aside from that, they synergize pretty well. Crawdaunt being weak to fairy, fighting, and bug. Tentacruel actually resists all of those types, and then Tentacruel is weak to Psychic, and Crawdaunt is actually immune to Psychic, so they actually can work decently well together. Crawdaunt is one of those mons that just can click buttons and kill things. It is a terrifying wall breaker with adaptability, adaptability boosted knockoffs, and liquidations and crab hammers. Crab hammer hits so hard if you're willing to risk that 10% miss. It can set up with both Dragon Dance and Swords Dance. Dragon Dance isn't always going to work when you have a pretty low base 55 speed stat. Even at +1 speed, you're not going to be outspeeding a lot of the things that you need to. But that's where Swords Dance Aqua Jet comes in. Swords Dance, you're able to boost your attack even more so than Dragon Dance and hit hard with adaptability boosted Aqua Jet, priority Aqua Jet. That is by far the most powerful form of priority we have on this team. And it's not always easy to put Crawdaunt in a position where it can actually set up either the Dragon Dance or the Swords Dance, because it is quite a frail mon. It's barely any bulkier than Swellow is. So if there aren't many opportunities for it to set up, Choice Band is always a great option for it. Choice Banded Aqua Jets, Choice Banded knockoffs. There are not very many good switch-ins to Crawdaunt. Personally, I think Focus Sash is a pretty good item on Crawdaunt. You can maybe survive any hit from a sweeper and do lots of damage to it, and pretty much any attack from Crawdaunt into Aqua Jet should be KOing most things. And I also have the option to take advantage of its low speed and run this Crawdaunt under Trick Room. As I mentioned, I do have 2 Trick Room setters on the team, being Mega Gallade and Bronzong. So if I want, I can set up Trick Room for something like Crawdaunt. And also, Hippowdon could be something that could take advantage of Trick Room. If I run some more offensive investment into it, it can hit stuff really hard with Earthquake. It's nice to have yet another dark type that can obliterate psychic and ghost types that things like Mega Gallade will often have trouble breaking through. So for my last 2 picks, I'm down to my 2 tier 5s, and As you can see, I only have one Z user at the moment, so I actually decided to make both of my tier 5s. I decided to give them both Z move capabilities. So what I could have done is I could have had Hydreigon at 120 plus Bronzong at 80 to use my 200 Z point budget, but I thought that having 2 tier 5 Z users would be more valuable than just one in Bronzong, which Bronzong isn't necessarily the best Z user out there. So I'm going to be giving both of my tier 5 picks Z move eligibility here. And my first one is going to be one that I knew that I wanted for quite some time to add to this team, and that is going to be Wigglytuff. So I have to give props to Maj, aka Mop of Justice, for using this Wigglytuff very well in the IBL D-League and really opening my eyes to what it can do. Of course, I have to say that the Wigglytuff is obviously going to be nicknamed Guildmaster. There is no other nickname for Wigglytuff. That is the ultimate nostalgic nickname for Wigglytuff. I think that's what it's most known for. For anyone who's played Mystery Dungeon, Wigglytuff is a very memorable character in that series. So I knew that I wanted Wigglytuff because I knew that I needed a third Stealth Rocker to back up Hippowdon and Bronzong. Wigglytuff actually does get access to Stealth Rocks. You can set them up if you need to, and if you can't for whatever reason, pack them on either Hippowdon or Bronzong. And it's also going to be a Wish Passer, which can help out a number of members on our team, mainly the Celesteela, which doesn't have great reliable recovery. Also Bronzong. So both of our steel types, we can heal them up with very fat wishes off of Wigglytuff's base 140 HP. I kind of like to think of Wigglytuff as a discounted fairy type Alomomola. Of course, Alomomola has base 165 HP and base 80 defense or something, so it is definitely a lot more bulky than Wigglytuff, and it also has access to Regenerator, so that is a much better defensive ability for it as well. However, Wigglytuff is a lot less passive than Alomomola. It's not as easy to set up on per se. It has a lot of coverage moves, as most normal types do. It can hit things with Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, Ice Beam, power up all of those attacks with a Z Crystal, depending on the matchup and what you need to break down. It has a couple of good abilities in Competitive and Frisk. So with Frisk, you can Wigglytuff can be a good scout mon. It comes in and reveals the opponent's held item, so that can be a nice tool to give you some more information on your opponent's team. And it also has Competitive, which may deter your opponents from wanting to go for Defog or setting Sticky Webs, because then you're going to be giving Wigglytuff +2 in its special attack. Can also serve as a Cleric. It has access to Heal Bell, and another cool option it has with its huge 140 base HP, it actually learns Counter. So if it takes 50% from an attack and then clicks Counter, because its HP is so high, it's pretty much going down. Whatever is in front of you is going down, because say it takes 100 damage from something. To most Pokemon, that might be close to 65-70%, but for Wigglytuff, it's only going to be 45 to 50%. So Counter is a pretty good move to have on Wigglytuff. There are also a couple of cool Z status options that Wigglytuff can take advantage of. I think my favorite of the bunch is probably Z Stockpile. I mentioned Hippowdon has Stockpile as well, but it doesn't have the ability to use Z moves. But Wigglytuff with Z Stockpile actually fully heals Wigglytuff's HP. Heal Bell does the same thing, but I think Z Stockpile is better, because if you can boost Wigglytuff's defense stats, then that's going to increase its bulk significantly, because Its natural bulk isn't, outside of HP, isn't really the best, but if you're able to boost its bulk, then it's going to be significantly bulkier, just based on how stats and damage calcs work and stuff. You can also run Z Snatch on it. So Z Snatch is going to boost its speed by not 1 but 2 stages. So it's basically like it's like a Shell Smash boost. There are a lot of slow Pokemon that have access to Shell Smash that can actually be pretty fast when they get to +2. Like Crustle is one that comes to mind that has I think a similar speed stat to Wigglytuff, but after a Shell Smash it can outspeed a lot of things. So if you get to +2 with Z Snatch, and then you have the appropriate coverage on Wigglytuff to hit the rest of your opponent's team, that you can potentially use this as a cleaner. I'm hoping I can use this just as effectively as Mop of Justice did in his PCL D-League run. Anyways, we're down to our last pick of the draft, and I knew that I could use a grass type on this team. So there are a number of tier 5 grass type options that I looked at, and eventually I settled on one that you might consider a little bit of a meme pick, but I think it could help this team in certain situations. Who knows, we may end up changing this pick down the road, swapping it out with a different grass type, but for now we are going to roll with the worst grass type starter of the bunch, Meganium. The main reason I thought a grass type would be nice for this team is I only had one true Scald switch in on this team, or one Mon that I really felt comfortable switching into Scalds, that being Tentacruel. And now I have Meganium, which doesn't really care about taking a burn. Although it can be a physical attacker. If you are building it specifically to switch into a Scald, then of course you're not going to use it as a physical attacker. You can just use it as a wall with moves like Giga Drain and stuff like that. The reason I chose Meganium over other grass types in tier 5 were there were some options that it has that other grass types don't. Like, it can set Leech Seed, which a lot of other grass types can, but Leech Seed is something that I wanted for this grass type slot. It has access to dual screens, so there are some certain mons that can set one screen, but Meganium can actually set both, which is nice. So I actually have quite a few mons on my team that can set dual screens. Wigglytuff can set dual screens as well. Also, Bronzong can set dual screens. Gallade can set dual screens too, but I don't think I'll ever use it in that role because it has to hold its Megastone. It doesn't have the ability to hold Light Clay, which Bronzong, Wigglytuff, and Meganium can. And Meganium also has Dragon Tail, so it can be used as a phaser. It can force things out that are trying to use Meganium as setup fodder. It is another cleric since it has access to aromatherapy, so both of my tier 5 mons can serve as clerics if I need them to. There are a couple moves that I wish that Meganium could learn, but unfortunately it actually doesn't learn them. The first being Sleep Powder. The only way that Meganium actually has of putting the opponent to sleep is Grass Whistle, which has a pathetic 55 accuracy. Which compared to Sleep Powder's 75 accuracy, it's almost unusable, honestly. I would find it very hard to justify running Grass Whistle on Meganium when it's only going to hit basically 50% of the time. It's basically a coin flip whether or not I can land the sleep on the opponent. And I also kind of wish that it could learn Growth to boost both of its attacking stats, especially if I were to get the Sun Up with a Z Sunny Day, boost my speed by 1 stage. I could use Growth to give myself +2 in both attack and special attack. With the Sun Up, fire off some solar beams. But unfortunately, Meganium does not learn Growth. Instead, I will just have to settle for Swords Dance to boost its special attack by, to boost its physical attack by 2 stages, and then it doesn't really have any way of boosting its special attack. Speaking of Meganium in Sun, Its hidden ability, Leaf Guard, helps it out only when sun is up. Unfortunately, it doesn't work in the same way as Hydration does. Like, for example, Manaphy, if you land a Toxic on it and then Manaphy sets up the rain, then at the end of that turn, its Toxic will be cured. But Leaf Guard does not work in the same way. If Meganium is already Toxicked and then you set up the sun, it will stay Toxicked. It only won't become Toxicked if you have the sun set up first. So Leaf Guard, pretty useless ability, unfortunately. So the Z status options being Z Sunny Day, Z Grass Whistle. If you can get Grass Whistle to hit, it works similarly to like Z Hypnosis on a Xurkitree. It gives you +1 in speed. Other Z options you have, it gets Earthquake, it gets Ancient Power, it gets Iron Tail, it gets Outrage. So you can power up all of those moves with a Z Crystal. So if you wanted to surprise a Dragon-type Pokemon like a Zygarde and hit it with this devastating Drake, then I doubt that would ever kill a Zygarde, because Zygarde's very bulky, but that is a heat option that you could use with and get a surprise kill with a Z Meganium set. That is going to be a wrap for this draft analysis video. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, comment down below what you think of the team, what you're most excited to see me use this season, and of course subscribe to the channel to make sure that you catch all of the battles for this season in the IBL. Also, please follow me on Twitter at PlatinumHowler. Also go ahead and follow the IBL League Twitter account to make sure that you catch up with all of the battles, not just mine, but all of the other coaches' battles as well. Get involved with the Discord server. You can join in the pick'ems for all of the matches around the league. Next Monday, we will be uploading our Week 1 game, and that is going to be against OG Albina and his Miami Ments. So stay tuned for that one. We will see you then. Peace.